On a 90 FOV, it's a lot easier to tell how far away someone is from your center line than 120 because what happens is warping. Can you explain what is warping? Yeah, so with the increase in FOV, all right, so I'm gonna do what XQC does, just make it easier, just see. Let's say that you are here, okay? This is you. This is your perception. Let's say this is 90 FOV. That's 90 FOV, okay? We'll say this is 120. All right, so warping is what happens when you have a higher FOV that is forced to be compressed onto your monitor that is a certain, the same size. So when you are at 90 FOV, there's gonna be less warping than there is at 120 FOV, okay? On 90 FOV, right? Your monitor is, let's say it's as big as 90 FOV. Let's say that 90 FOV is normal, okay? If someone is here, okay? And you're 90 FOV, when you go from a 90 FOV and that person stays where they are, you don't move. When you switch from a 90 FOV to a 120, that 120 is being forced to be pushed down into the same size as your monitor was for 90 FOV, okay? So now that person isn't here anymore. They're still in the same spot, like physically, right? But now it looks like they're here, okay? So what happens is, and this is really good, like this is really important on games with very like precise hit registration, is that when your center line of what you're looking at, on a 90 FOV, it's a lot easier to tell how far away someone is from your center line than 120 because what happens is warping. Because you think that they're only this far away, but what happens is the image is warped the farther you get out to your peripherals over here. The farther it is, the more it's warped and like pressed together to make up for that 90. It'll look like your screen is getting pulled back into the body or whatever it is. So with flicking, it won't be as accurate, I guess, if you want to put it that way. On higher FOV, the farther out they are, the more, in a way, it's slight, it's very small, but it's more warped. Okay, so like here, I'll show you. Okay, so look. All right, so we'll go to 60 FOV. Look at the screen, okay, on how far away he is from my crosshair right now. How far away is he on my monitor now from my crosshair, right? Distance is probably like halved, right? So see how much farther away, like I haven't moved my crosshair. My crosshair hasn't fucking moved at all. Literally has not fucking moved. So this is warping, okay? You see how the farther out it goes, the more the image warps. See how he looks stretched right now? See how he looks stretched as fuck? But when I zoom in, he's normal. That's what warping is. This might look to you as if it's 90 degrees to your right or whatever, or maybe you think this is 45 degrees, but this is really like 90 fucking degrees to your right. You're like, this is a flick of about, 45 degrees, but it's fucking 90. It's a fisheye. That's what it is. That's why I say warping, right? So thank you. I don't even know who the fuck this is. Okay, but it's warping. Okay, so edge of screen, right? Edge of screen. The closer they get to the center, the slower they're gonna seem. So right here, see how I'm barely moving my mouse? And you see how much they're moving on my screen? Moving the same amount. See how little they're moving. It's literally the same amount. That's what warping is. And that's why I tell people, lower FOV, less warping. Less warping, better for aim. Obviously, there's going to be some people who are kind of used to that, but for the most part, all this 120 does is make you look fast. It's like, it just makes you look fast. But in my opinion, tracking and everything, in the middle of your screen, yeah, people are going to look like they're moving slower. But on the edge of your screen, it's fucked. In my opinion, if you really want to improve your aim, fuck high FOV, dude. Play low FOV. That's why some of the best like rev players and shit, like some of the best rev players like Magic Tool and everything, play on like 70 FOV. That's why I play on 90, because it's so much more accurate. I have gotten used to 90. So I started at 120, obviously, when I was just like along the bandwagon of everyone else in this fucking game. For me, I was like, I'm going to slowly work it down. And I went from 120 and I went straight to 110. And then I played with 110 a little bit. Yeah, there's still a little bit of warping, but it's not as much, obviously. Then I went to, I think I went to 105. And then I went to 100. And then I jumped from 100 to 90. And here I am. And low-key, I have thought about moving down to like 80. But the problem is there's some games like Valorant that have an FOV of 103. And it's not too much warping, really, at all. I don't know, I just don't want to get too far off of it. But if you main Krunker and you only play Krunker, fucking experiment, dude. Go down to like 80. I'm not going to... I don't recommend a single FOV. I don't recommend a single. I play on 90. There's comp players who play on different FOVs that are lower. There's some comp players that play on a little bit higher, right? It's just a matter of finding which one is you're used to and you feel comfortable with. When you go from 120, if you go from 120 right now, okay, and you aim and you go down to 90, you're going to feel like your sense is fucking, it's going to feel higher. It's going to feel higher, okay? But it's just for those small adjustments. So like if I'm facing Scarlet, right, if I'm tracking them, that me being like, you know, maybe like a little bit off to the side of them on 90 is going to look right. So my crosshair, without zooming in, touched their head on 90. Right now, it overlaps their head. So I might think I'm a lot closer than I am, but if I go down to 60, look how far off I am. And that could be the difference between hitting a shot or not. And that's what warping is. Even when you're hella fucking like close to them on your FOV, 120 FOV makes that much of a difference. You might be like, yo, why are my shots not hitting? I'm tracking them perfectly. But if you're shooting here, right? Obviously the hitbox of this fucking game is crazy, right? But if you're shooting like off to the side and you're like, yo, I understand the hitbox is like really big, right? Why isn't my shot hitting? Well, to you, it looks like you're fucking right on them. Here's another thing, right? Stretch res. There's probably a lot of you that plays on stretch res. The thing is with stretch, this game's movement is really fast, okay? So the problem is on stretch res was primarily used in games like CSGO because of pixel peaks, right? It gave you that small advantage, right, in milliseconds or whatever you want to call it, where you might have the chance of seeing the enemy before they see you because you had it, like, you know, your stretch res was 1280 by fucking 1080 or whatever, and they were on native, okay? And it gives you that small pixel because it boils down to the fact that monitors are still pixels. It may look super crisp and clear to you, but if you really lean into your monitor, like you really fucking lean in, right, you can see not every single individual pixel, but you can see pixels on your monitor, right? The movement of this game is so fucking fast. There's no point to have stretch res, okay? There might be some people out there who might like to use a slight stretch to maybe get those small adjustments in terms of, like, who knows, rev or sniper. Tracking is the biggest thing in this game. Tracking is used in this game more than any other game. You need better tracking in this game than you do, like, this again, against good people. You need better tracking in this game than you do in Overwatch, and I would say almost any other game out there, because of the fact that movement is so fucking erratic. Native is better to track people in. If I'm on fucking Scarlet, do me a favor and just B-hop in front of me, like left and right. Like, obviously, like a pretty big distance. But if I go 1280 by 1080, okay, it's a pretty big stretch, okay? Tracking them on an AK, right? Let's just say I'm aimed in on an AK right now. A lot of times, they're going to look like they're moving faster, because in a way, they are. Since you're cutting down the x-axis of your field of view, right? Your field of view is still, might be 90 or 120 or whatever it is, right? But you're still cutting it down because of that stretch. You're stretching your vision out, okay? So they're going to look like, especially in this game, they're moving faster, right? And that's what happens when a lot of people's aim becomes, like, shaky. Play on native, right? They don't move as fast, and you're going to find that your aim will become, like, a lot smoother. Tracking people is a lot fucking easier. And this is me aimed in with a hunter, obviously. And it's really good for tracking people in fights. If you see that someone's going to turn, all you got to do is take your aim and move with them. If they're going to turn, unless they're doing it super fast, like super erratically, you can literally just follow them as they turn. Especially if you're an AK player, an LMG player, maybe an SMG. But for the most part, like LMG, dude, is really good on native. Ask Rod, right? Rod is like an LMG main, dude. And he'll tell you that native is the way to go. So also what happens is when you go on a stretch resolution, you have to become more sensitive aiming horizontally, if that makes sense. And that's why it becomes shaky, because you're trying to over adjust when tracking someone, because maybe you're tracking them too slow. So then you start tracking faster, but then you're over tracking. You'll find people that come from CSGO that play on stretch res, right? They'll play stretch res on this game because in their mind, there's still that pixel peak advantage and everything like that. And they don't understand that the movement of this game plays a big part in tracking and everything. So in the middle of your vision, when you're tracking someone from your center line of view, like the first 30 degrees, it's going to look like they're moving a lot slower than if they were on the outside. And I know I already talked about that, but it does make for a little bit easier tracking because it will make people look like they're moving slower than if you were on like 90 FOV. If you're playing on like Rev though, you want to get, Rev is more important for those like slight adjustments and slight flicks and everything to get your get headshots and everything. I would recommend not just going from 120 to fucking 90. Like that's going to be a really big fucking change. Fuck it, you do you. If you want to do that, go for it. Personally, I went 120, like 110, 105, 100, 90. I went down in increments to get used to it.